Assalamu alaikum. We are live here with the Islamic Center of Passaic County, and we have today's segment, which is focusing on My Body, My Amana. And this is a segment dedicated as a reminder that our bodies are a trust given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have two experts here with us today to shed some light on how to implement healthy eating habits and physical activity into our routines, given the situation that we are enduring these days. So we have Dr. Sarah Al-Nakib, who has worked in the area of community nutrition as a registered dietitian. She's a nutritionist for over 10 years. Dr. Al-Nakib joined the Rutgers Cooperative Extension in the Department of Family and Community Health Sciences as an assistant professor in January 2015. She has focused on food insecurity and improving food access in Passaic County as part of her role in the Passaic County Food Policy Council. Welcome, Dr. Sarah Al-Nakib.
Thank you so much, Rana, and thank you all for joining us today. Today, my presentation will be about nutrition and immunity. Rana, do you see my presentation slides?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So just to give you a little bit of a breakdown of what we'll talk about, I'm going to quickly talk about Rutgers Cooperative Extension and a little bit of a connection between COVID and nutrition and immunity. And then we'll talk about the microbiome and what does good nutrition mean. And we'll put it all together, and I promise to give you lots and lots of resources. So first, what is cooperative extension? So Rutgers Cooperative Extension is the outreach arm of Rutgers University. That means there's a Rutgers office in every county in the state of New Jersey. And so there's 21 Rutgers offices other than the ones in Newark, New Brunswick, and Camden. Also, for Rutgers Cooperative Extension, there are three main departments. There's the Family and Community Health Sciences Department, 4-H or Youth Development, and then the Agriculture and Natural Resources Department. And Alex and I are from the Family and Community Health Sciences Department. And Rutgers Cooperative Extension is a unique kind of funded project where federal, state, and local governments all share part of the responsibility. And so part of my paycheck comes from the United States Department of Agriculture, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. The other part comes from Rutgers University, and the final part comes from Passaic County commissioners, the county freeholders, if you will. And so these are your tax-paying dollars at work. So please make sure you reach out to your Rutgers Cooperative Extension office if you ever need any help with youth development, health and community work, as well as agriculture or natural resources. So first, I want to start with an ayah from the Quran that talks a little bit about, what we're supposed to do with our bodies. And so in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks and says, Ya ayyuhan nasu kulu mimma fi al-ardi halalan tayyiban. And so that means eat from what is lawful and wholesome on the earth. And so a lot of times we think about what we need to eat as halal or lawful, but we never really consider, how important wholesome is. And so Allah put wholesome and lawful together in this ayah. And so we really need to consider that this is the mandate from Allah for our bodies, and that we really need to make sure that we eat both halal and tayyib. And this is important because we recognize that comorbidities are really part of one of the reasons why COVID has spread so much and has really made a dent in mortality rates in the United States. And so New York State, assessed the death rates of COVID victims in 2019, 2020, and found that 86% had one other disease, a comorbidity. And so those diseases had mostly to do with what we call metabolic syndrome, or issues that relate to weight and health. So things like hypertension, diabetes, high triglycerides and high cholesterol, a heart disease and lung disease. And so all of these are reasons reasons why COVID could have led to higher mortality rates, were because people had these comorbidities. And we know that metabolic syndrome is a group of different kind of symptoms that have that scientists and doctors put them together because we know that they all lead to kind of similar health outcomes. And so having high triglyceride levels or having low, good cholesterol, HDL, or having, high blood pressure or a large waistline and even high fasting blood sugar. All of those things are kind of grouped together to be part of metabolic syndrome. And these are the things that can lead to things like diabetes and heart disease that were in the previous slide. And this is important because about 70 million Americans every year, almost about half, are actually obese. And about 94%, 42% are overweight or getting there. And so this is a really big issue because that means that our healthcare costs are increasing, our mortality rates are decreasing, and it's causing a big issue. And in New Jersey, we're a little bit better. So obesity rates in New Jersey are about 23% for adults, but it's also increasing in children, which is the scary part. So Robert Wood Johnson Foundation recognizes that this generation of kids is going to be the first generation of kids to live shorter lives than their parents. And so that has to do a lot with our lifestyle and how we eat. And so Alex will talk a little bit about physical activity, and I'll talk a little bit about nutrition. And so why does immunity and obesity, why does obesity matter for immunity? So obesity is linked to a large amount of fat cells in our body. And we know that large amounts of fat cells lead to high inflammation, or our body has a lot of activity with our immune response. And so that creates kind of a more production of our immune cells, and it can lead to, when we get an infection, that we have fewer white blood cells and have issues with fighting infections. And so our immune system is complex. It's not, just our white blood cells, or it's not just this one organ. It's actually a system of organs, tissues, and and cells working all together to help defend our body from any foreign, invaders, things like viruses or bacteria or microbes. And so nutrition and immunity matter, and scientists focus on three main things that can help us improve our immunity through nutrition. And so macro and micronutrients are one way, antioxidants and phytochemicals are another way, and then prebiotics and probiotics are another way. And so I'll go through each of these very quickly. So macronutrients are basically categories in which we put food more broadly. And these are things like carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Carbohydrates are the main source of energy for our body, and therefore our immune systems needs carbohydrates to function. Carbohydrates can be found in things like whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and they have lots of fiber and lots of vitamins and phytonutrients that I'll talk about that also help immunity. But eating or drinking lots of processed carbohydrates can actually reduce the function of immune systems. So, for example, we know that drinking sugary beverages can increase your blood sugar, which will decrease your immune response. So it's really important to make sure that we have carbohydrates that are close to their natural form. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. Proteins are also really important for immunity, and so they are the building blocks for a lot of these enzymes and the antibodies that actually fight the germs that we need. And so proteins can come from both animal sources as well as plant sources, and they are made up of amino acids. And so I'll talk a little bit about that later, but there are essential amino acids that we actually need for our body to survive. And so it's really important to make sure that we drink lots of water when we are eating high protein, because protein takes more water to digest and break down in our body. And so it's really important for kidney health that we do eat, protein, but with enough water to help process it. And then finally, fat is the last category of the macronutrients. And oftentimes fat is considered, the enemy of good nutrition. And lots of times in the previous, studies, we see things that fat leads to more, obesity, things like that. But actually, that's not true. Fat is really important for our bodies. Certain vitamins like vitamin A, D, E, and K can only be absorbed with fat. And so that means that if we don't eat fat, those vitamins will not help our body. And you'll notice that later on, I'll talk about how some of these vitamins are really important for immune health. Also, carbohydrate. The fact is that we found that carbohydrates, increased carbohydrate intake can actually lead to increased triglycerides, which ends up leading to high cholesterol and having issues down the line with fat. And so it's really important to make sure that we really balance all three of these. And healthy fats can be found in any kind of form that is unsaturated or natural. So things like nuts, seeds, oils, fish, and they might have things like omega-3 or omega-6 fatty acids, which are different compounds in the fat. So there are so that was the macronutrients, and now micronutrients. There are two categories of micronutrients: vitamins and minerals. And micronutrients are basically compounds that we need for everyday function that we can't make in our body, and so we need it from external sources. There are about 13 essential vitamins, and like I mentioned, 4 of them need fat to be, processed in our body. So things like vitamin A, D, E, and K, and 9 of them are water soluble, so they just need water to, include. And for minerals, there are about 16 minerals that come from the soil that we eat through our fruits and vegetables, as well as the proteins in the meat. And so I'll go through some of them that are most important for immune health in a few slides. And then finally, antioxidants and phytochemicals. So antioxidants are those compounds that actually help support our immune health overall. Lots of studies have found antioxidants help reduce cancer risks, and the way it does that is by functioning every day in this world, such as breathing, exercising, or even lifestyle habits like smoking or using our cell phone, lead to something called free radicals. That is when cells kind of break off and start creating harm in our body. And so free radicals weaken normal cells and make them more susceptible to diseases like cancer. And so antioxidants neutralize those free radicals, and they're found mostly in fruits and vegetables. Phytochemicals are the natural chemicals that are found in plants that help give them their beautiful color, flavor, and taste. And they can help impact the chemical processes in our body to help actually improve our health and reduce any diseases or prevent any diseases. And so things like they have been shown to reduce inflammation in our body. And so I mentioned that fat cells increase inflammation. And so phytochemicals actually decrease the inflammation in our immune systems. And then similarly, they also help block any substances that can cause cancer in our body or carcinogens. And they also prevent DNA from being damaged inside the cell. And that's why it's really important to eat a variety of different color fruits and vegetables, beans and legumes each day, because each color provides a different support or phytonutrient and phytochemical for our body. And then finally, we want to talk about the microbiome and immunity. So our gastrointestinal tract, our GI systems, or our stomachs and guts actually makes up about 75% of our immune system. So our immune system actually, breaks down. So part of the gut breaks down the food, and the microbiome has lots of healthy bacteria that's inside of our stomachs that actually supports our immune health and plays an essential role in it. So this healthy bacteria breaks down harmful bacteria that comes into our stomachs, as well as produces a lot of the vitamins that we actually need for our immune health. And so that's why the microbiome, or this gut bacteria, the healthy bacteria, is really, really important. And so it needs something called probiotics and prebiotics to survive. So probiotics is the more popular version that everyone has heard of, and those are basically living organisms that are found in food that are good for the microbes in our stomach or bacteria in our stomach. And so those help improve the health of the good bacteria and kill any bad bacteria. And so they are actually found in fermented foods like yogurt or the yogurt drinks, kefir, some aged cheeses, and kimchi, which is a fermented cabbage, sauerkraut, and even non-dairy cultivated yogurts. And so we know that this is really important for our health because it actually helps the good bacteria in our stomachs. Prebiotics, however, are what the bacteria in our stomachs eat. And so this is important for the bacteria to survive. And so to make sure it survives, we have to give it what it needs, which is a lot of high fiber foods. And so normally high fiber foods, we actually personally can't digest. And so the bacteria digests it for us and gives us all of the great vitamins that we need for our survival. So foods that are really high in fiber, such as oatmeal or flaxseed or legumes such as lentils or barley, or even like fruits and vegetables like berries and onions are all examples of foods that are really good and that have tons of prebiotics. So what does good nutrition mean? So obviously you saw that I wasn't promoting one specific food or one specific kind of part of the plate, because we know that every single part of the plate supports good health, and that good nutrition prevents against viruses, infections, and other health problems. And so we want to make sure that we're eating very holistically, a well-balanced diet. And so this is a picture of My Plate, which is found on myplate.gov, which is part of the United States Department of Agriculture's health, nutrition and health campaigns. And it supports the idea that we want to make sure that every day half of our meals are fruits and vegetables, and then a quarter is green and a quarter is protein with a healthy helping of dairy. And so we want to make sure that we're not eating only one category of food, we're eating all of these different categories, and that we're eating different colors, because like I mentioned, the phytochemicals provide different immune health responses based on the different color of that fruit or vegetable. So what does this mean? How do we put it in practice? So the first thing I would recommend is eat more plant foods. So what does that mean? That means eat more fruits, vegetables, beans, and legumes. These plant-based foods have lots of the components that I've been talking about, right? You've noticed that when I talk about, phytonutrients, I'm talking about, plant-based foods. When I'm talking about prebiotics, I'm talking about plant-based foods. And so the more plant-based foods you eat in your diet, the more likely you'll cover a lot of these things that I've talked about. You also want to eat foods that are closest to nature. So the more processed the food, the less nutritious it is. So even when you go from an actual fruit to a juice, you lose a lot of the fiber that's beneficial for that gut bacteria. And so it's really, really important to make sure that you eat, whenever you put something in your mouth, you think, how close is it to its natural form? And then you want to eat the rainbow. And like I mentioned, lots of antioxidants and phytonutrients are important for immune health. And so eating different colors of fruits and vegetables is really important every day. And think always quality over quantity. And so oftentimes we eat lots of food because it's, easy but tasteless. Excuse me 1 second. That was my 15-minute break to get up and stretch my legs. And so we want to make sure that we're eating flavorful food, and just by enjoying and trying to eat higher quality flavorful food, we'll find ourselves that we're satisfied with a lot less because it's so flavorful and delicious. So what are some of the antioxidants and vitamins that we should consider for immune health? These are some vitamins that I'd recommend focusing on if you're worried about your immune health. First is vitamin A. It helps protect our immune system by fighting against infection. It also helps our skin and tissues around our mouth, our stomachs, and our noses to heal faster. And it provides support for the respiratory system or our lungs. And so vitamin A can be found in things like sweet potato, corn, carrots, and spinach. Beta carotene is also really important for our health. And so it actually fights infection in our cells and is a powerful antioxidant. And so it supports, those big cells that are a part of the immune system called macrophages, and they help kind of take away any of those bacteria or viruses that are in our bloodstream. And so our bodies actually take beta carotene and make it into vitamin A. That's one of the things that bacteria in our stomachs does for us. And so that's why it's really important to make sure we have lots of beta carotene in our body, because then it will help digest those foods and make it into vitamin A. Vitamin C is also very important. And we know that, whenever we get a cold, we drink lots of orange juice, or we drink lemon or something like that, because it has lots of vitamin C. Because vitamin C actually helps stimulate the formation of those antibodies that fight those diseases. And so foods obviously like oranges have lots of vitamin C, but other foods like strawberries and tomatoes are also packed with vitamin C. And then finally, vitamin E is really important because it's an antioxidant that helps neutralize or reduce the activity of free radicals, the things that come from just exercising and breathing, using our cell phones, being humans in the 21st century. And so the idea is that we want to make sure we get lots of vitamin E. Things that have vitamin E are lots of nuts like hazelnut, peanuts, almonds, and any of their nut butters. And lots of cereals are actually fortified or added with vitamin E. And then some minerals that I recommend if you're interested in immune health are things like zinc, lycopene, and selenine. So zinc is really important for wound healing, and so it really helps when we have any sores or cuts in our mouth, our esophagus, as well as our stomachs, because it'll actually support some of that immune system response. And so zinc can be found in lean meats such as poultry, seafood, or even in legumes like beans or seeds or nuts. Lycopene helps prevent against cancer and the damage of the cells, and so it's like a great resource. And so it's found in red or pink foods, so tomatoes, watermelon, apricot, or even grapefruit. Those are all great sources of lycopene. Selenine is actually also a natural killer of cells, and so they support those cancer-fighting cells, and it's found in things like seafoods like tuna, shrimp, and red snapper, as well as Brazil nuts or even egg yolks. So I'm going to get this question, so I'm going to get ahead of it. The question is, can I just take a supplement? Can I just take vitamin C and zinc and all of those things? And so, supplements are a great way to make sure that you get your phytonutrients and support your immune response. But there are certain things that you want to consider before you start taking supplements. The first is that the United States doesn't actually regulate supplements. So what does that mean? Any medicine that you take or any food that you eat or drink, the Food and Drug Administration actually checks to make sure that that drug or that food is actually what it says it is. Especially for medicine, it makes sure that it's the same quality and efficiency. And so, vitamins, minerals, and any of those supplements like garlic, turmeric, all of those are actually not checked by the FDA. And so what you're putting in your mouth could actually not have any of the nutrients that it says. And so it's really important to consider where you're buying your supplements and making sure that it is appropriate. The second thing is how bioavailable it is. And so in subhanAllah, the way that God created food, in its natural form, it is easily accepted in our bodies. However, when we synthesize it or try to make it in a lab, it doesn't always work well with our bodies. And so that's why it's really important to make sure that the type of vitamin C, so it might say vitamin C, but the type of vitamin C is actually what is compatible with our bodies so that it's easy for our bodies to absorb and digest. Because if it doesn't, basically, it just goes out with your urine, and you won't actually absorb any of it. And then finally, if you're taking any medications, you really need to talk to your pharmacist or doctor before you start a supplement, because there is a great deal of interactions between food and drugs. And so it's really, really important to make sure you talk to a medical provider before you actually take a supplement. So that is the end of my presentation, and we will be sending out some resources. Our department, like I mentioned, provides health and nutrition education for the community. And so we have a Wellness Wednesday session every Wednesday at 2 p.m. That's free and live for anyone who is interested. And if you are interested in seeing the previous ones, we have an archive of all of the previous Wellness Wednesday sessions. We also have a Visions article newsletter that comes out 4 times a year that you can sign up for to get, and it has lots of really interesting articles about health and wellness overall. And then finally, we have a text messaging program if you need an extra nudge on making sure you meet your healthy habits every day. And so it texts you once a week or twice a week, depending on what you want, a health tip to remind you to stay healthy. This is my contact information. So I believe I'll take questions at the end, but if you ever need to contact me, please feel free to connect with me. You have my office phone number, my email, as well as our website for our county. So with that, I'd like to thank you, and Rona, take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah Naqib. You made some really great points about the supplements and about the diet and the nutrition that we need to focus on. A lot of people think that we need to completely eliminate fat into our diets. So that was a great point that you made. The next wonderful speaker that we have today is Alex Del Calo. And Alex earned her master's degree in health promotion, as well as her bachelor's in health behavior and minor in strength and conditioning from the University of Delaware, where she worked as a graduate assistant for worksite wellness. She started her career at the YMCA of Delaware as the Assistant Director of Health and Wellness before accepting her current position with Rutgers Cooperative Extension in the Family and Community Health Sciences Department in Salem County. So we welcome you, Alex, and you can take it away with your presentation on physical activity.
Thank you very much. Let's see. So today I am going to present to you all on basically how much sitting we've done over the past, almost a year at this point. And I want to preface everything I'm going to say today with the fact that we talked a lot about immune system with Sarah, and physical activity is an integral part to a healthy immune system as well, because it's an integral part of being healthy. So today I'm going to talk about how much we're sitting each day, and how that has changed over the past few decades, what prolonged sitting does to your body and how it affects your health, and then finally what we can do to combat the effects of prolonged sitting. Here's some of the things that I want us to remember, though, as we're talking about this, is that health behaviors don't live in a bubble. They work together. So, and health and wellness are multifaceted. Sarah just got finished talking about eating a healthy, balanced diet, but we need to also thinking about moving more, taking time to de-stress, and do the best you can to maintain your social relationships right now, because all of those things are working together to influence our overall health and wellness. So let's first start by talking about how much of your day you usually spend sitting. And typically, I would ask the audience to let me know how much they're sitting. But over the past couple of times I've done this, I've heard a lot of people sitting a lot more than they typically do in their everyday lives over the past year. But overall, we're looking at work time of 8 to 10 hours, sometimes more at this point. And most of that time is being spent in a chair. If you're anything like Sarah and I, we're actually spending more time sitting because typically we're in the community a lot and we're able to move around a lot. But unfortunately, during this time, we haven't been able to get out into the community. So a lot of the presentations that we do, we're still in our office, so we're not able to do that additional standing that we do. But I will tell you, I'm practicing what I'm preaching right now because I am standing while I'm presenting to you all today. The other thing we take into consideration during the day is commute time. According to the Census Bureau, we have an average commute time of roughly an hour round trip. Some of us may have cut that out because we're working from home now, but many of us are still commuting. And during that commute time, we are sitting. Another thing to take in consideration is screen time. This includes TV, phones, computers, electronic games, social media, and other things outside of work time. So many of us are sitting on a computer in front of a screen all day, but then when we're done our work and we're in our leisure time, we're still pursuing these screen time pursuits. Lastly, we have to talk about our sleep time. Hopefully, most of you are getting 6 to 9 hours of sleep. But the reality here is when you add all this time up, we could be sitting or resting anywhere from 15 to all day, 24 hours in one day. So how has that changed over the past few decades? Well, deindustrialization and increased sedentary employments have played a huge role in decreasing physical activity, and these have real consequences, and we'll talk about that in a minute. If you look at high activity occupations between 1950 and 1970, 30% of the population, or 20.8 million people, were in high activity occupations. We look at 1970 to 2000, 22.6%, a decrease of that population was in high activity occupations. However, there was an increase of total people because our population size got bigger. Now let's look at low activity occupations. In the 1950s, we had 23.3% of the population in low activity occupations, around 16 million people. 1970 and 2000, it was 41%. But you can see that from 1970 to 2000, we again have an increase in number of people because the increase in population size. And this is a graph to show that change between high activity occupations and low activity occupations over time. Some other things that have happened are advances in technologies and transportation. We've had a decrease in need for physical activity in our daily lives. We drive more, we walk less, we bike less. There's also been an increase in sedentary pursuits. In 1950, only about 10% of households had a TV. And now, probably 98% of households have at least one TV, and many of us have multiple TVs in our homes. And I could probably assume at this point, many of you right here, right now, have at least two screens that you're watching this on, or within eyesight, a TV, a computer, or a smartphone, right? So all of these things have kind of distracted us from physical activity over the last couple of years. I will also note, though, that exercise activity has increased over the last 20 years. And in my webinar a couple of weeks ago, I talked about how sedentary promoting environments and are seemingly inescapable in our society today. And so to emphasize that, I want you to just imagine for a moment the last time that you were in an airport. I know it probably seems like a lifetime ago because we haven't been able to go anywhere recently, but imagine the last time you were in an airport. Did you see one of these? Where was everybody? You have the stairs in the middle and the escalators on the side, right? Everyone is lined up in the escalator and no one's using the stairs. And I don't want to hear it's because you have your luggage. I see people who have nothing but their carry-on bags, haven't even gotten to their heavy luggage yet, and they're still waiting in line for the escalator when we could be taking the stairs. This is a huge change that's happened over the last couple of years. And according to a study done by James Levin in 2004, sales of labor-saving devices correlated with obesity rates, whereas food intake did not correlate with obesity rates. And mechanization accounts for a little over 100 calories per day. in decreased calorie expenditure. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And this estimation was similar to other studies that had been done previously. So I want you all to think for just a moment, what in your mind is the biggest health issue caused by prolonged sitting? What is the biggest health issue caused by prolonged sitting? First thing I want to talk about before we get into the effects of sitting is energy and the way our body uses energy. So the first thing is that we have three main ways that our body uses energy, or our metabolism. And the one I'm going to talk about today is our basal metabolic rate. And this is the amount of energy our body needs in order to keep us alive at rest. It's for cellular respiration. It's for maintaining body temperature. It's for delivering blood and nutrients to our body tissues, repairing cell damage, and so on. Metabolic equivalence, or METs, is a measurement of energy cost in relation to BMR. In other words, if you were to sleep for 24 hours in one day, and you in particular, everyone's different, but you only needed 2,000 calories for that, that would be one MET for you. And to compare that, walking leisurely is around 2 to 2.5 METs. So if you walked for 24 hours, you would expend roughly 4,000 to 5,000 calories, okay? And I just want to give you a really broad, basic understanding of this concept, because we're going to talk about this a little bit more when we talk about the effects of sitting. And the other thing I wanted to mention very quickly is that physical activity does not always mean exercise. They are different. Exercise is a type of physical activity, but not all physical activity is exercise. So let's get right into the effects of sitting here. As soon as you sit down, your caloric expenditure decreases to roughly 1 to 1.5 METs. And as I said before, if you remember, walking at about 2 miles per hour is 2 to 2.5 METs. And general house cleaning is around 3 METs. So you can quickly see how increased sit time decreases your energy expenditure and can cause an uptick in our weight over time, because energy in, or our food, versus our activity energy out, has to be equal in order for us to maintain the same weight. When we have an increase in energy expenditure, so our energy expenditure is more and our food intake is less, then we lose weight. Conversely, if we eat more food than we are expending, we gain weight, okay? After just 3 hours of sitting, we have a decrease in arterial dilation. And over time, this can cause stiffness, arterial stiffness, and can increase our risk for hypertension and cardiovascular disease. Let me explain that a little bit more. Many of us go to the doctor, we get our blood pressure taken, and we get 2 numbers. A lot of times I find that people don't totally understand what those 2 numbers mean. But we know that our blood pressure wants to be under 120 over 80. Those 2 numbers are representative of what is happening in your body when your heart beats. So the top number is your blood pressure reading, is the pressure of the arteries when your heart is actively forcing blood through your body. The bottom number is the pressure between heartbeats. So in healthy arteries, you can see the picture over on the right-hand side, healthy arteries are able to dilate and open up when there's an increase of volume being forced through them, like when your heart is beating. Whereas stiff arteries can't dilate and don't have the capacity to dilate, which means there's an increase in pressure when there's an increase in volume being pushed through them when your heart is beating. So when it comes to heart health, this isn't very good because when your arteries aren't able to flex, you have a lot of this blood being forced back into this left ventricle here, where your blood returns to your heart to get oxygenated. And when all that blood is being forced back into your left ventricle, it increases the left ventricle load, which over time causes hypertrophy. And that is also not something we want. That's after just 3 hours of sitting, right? At 4 hours of sitting, there is a decrease in cerebral blood flow, causing increased risk for neurodegenerative diseases, but also Even in the short term, we know that you can have decreased ability to store information and problem solve, right? So short-term issues being that, long-term issues being neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Bone health is another concern for prolonged sitting because bone mineral density decreases with sit time. In men, this effect seems to be reversed with moderate to vigorous physical activity. However, in this particular study that I looked at, the effects were not reversed in women with moderate to vigorous physical activity. However, I will say that in this particular study, men did spend more time doing moderate to vigorous physical activity than women. And they also had shorter sedentary bouts, which means they broke up their sit time more. So more studies need to be done with this. And if women did similar activities like the men in the study did, we could see similar results. At 7 to 11 hours of sitting, we have an increased amount of insulin released relative to glucose level, increasing your risk for diabetes. And the scarier part here is that even with food intake matched for your energy expenditure that day, you still have a negative effect on insulin reaction or insulin action when you have sit time. Okay, Alex, what does that mean? So normally, this is sort of how this works. Your insulin is the key that opens your cells up to store extra glucose for later use because too much glucose in the bloodstream wreaks havoc on our organs. So this is sort of like the normal pathway that happens when our insulin and cells are playing nicely together, okay? When there is an increased amount of insulin released given the same amount of glucose, and we start to get insulin insensitivity, our cells are not opening up to take in that glucose the same way it was before, okay? On top of that, at the same time, our body is developing dyslipidemia, or an abnormal amount of lipids like triglycerides and cholesterol in your bloodstream, okay? So not only are you having insulin resistant problems, but you're also increasing the cholesterol and triglycerides in your bloodstream from something fairly normal like this to something like this. Again, this is a little dramatization here, but you understand the process. This over time increases our risk for cardiovascular disease and can cause stiffening and hardening of the arteries as well. As a side note here, between 1 and 2 days of bed rest actually causes insulin resistance regardless of BMI. That means that you could have somebody who is extremely fit and in very good health, and if they were on bed rest for 1 to 2 days, you would see the same issues with them. So if that wasn't enough, there's still more to this. Recreational or leisure time sitting is correlated with increased mortality and cardiovascular risk, regardless of physical activity participation. And in people who sit for 4 hours per day over people who sit 2 hours per day, their risks are 125% more than those sitting just 2 hours more per day. And I want to sort of compare again, our sedentary pursuits like screen time activities are about 1 to 1.5 METs. And we're comparing those to more active leisure time activities like gardening or playing with your children or pets. That is 3 to 5 METs. So it's double the amount, if not more, of your sit time. Just 1 additional hour of sitting per weekend day increases your risk for metabolic syndrome, regardless of physical activity, and increased risk for various chronic diseases and all-cause mortality caused by prolonged sitting are independent of moderate to vigorous physical activity. We call this the active couch potato phenomena. This means that even though somebody may be getting 150 to 300 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week, they're still sitting a significant portion of their day. And Overall, what this means is sitting time significantly increases all premature mortality risks regardless of exercise. Well, let that sink in for a minute. Okay? Because that's kind of scary.
That is very scary.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I think, at this point, I'm hoping that many of you are sitting there. Hopefully you're standing now, right? Because we're about 45 minutes into our presentation. And this has been so profound to you, saying, okay, Alex, this all sounds really terrible. Now, what can I do about it? Here's the thing. The answer is really simple, but it is not easy. And it may seem trivial when I tell you what it's going to be, but the impact is very clear in the literature. It's going to take dedication and consistency is key with anything when it comes to health behaviors. So here we go. All you have to do is get up and move for just 3 to 5 minutes every 45 to 60 minutes. That's it. If you are able to do that, you can prevent arterial stiffness and maintain vascular health. You can prevent insulin insensitivity. You're increasing the blood flow to your brain. You increase your overall energy expenditure. But here's the thing. Just standing may not be enough. That's why I highlighted and bolded the move part, right? Many people have standing desks now, and while standing is good, it's better than our sitting. At least we're getting something out of it. There are studies that show that standing may not be enough to combat all of these effects. Okay. So how can we incorporate more movement into our day? If you're at work or if you're during your work hours, if you get a phone call, you can stand up when you answer the phone, march in place a few times, or walk around a little bit before you go back to sitting. If you go for a coffee refill, you can do some light stretches or exercises like this picture over here on the right. However, it says that you can make it more difficult by filling your mug with coffee. Do not exercise with hot coffee in your cup. Please, I am not going to be responsible for somebody saying I got burned because Alex told me to do coffee break exercises. No, I did not say that. Please don't put coffee in your cup. All right. Another thing that works really well in the workplace are workstation devices. Under desk pedal devices was shown to increase the METs on average to 1.5, and the heart rate went up by 12 to 19% above baseline. And it was shown that the most effective mode for this was high frequency pedaling with low resistance. And it's also important to note that during this, there was no increased respiratory rate, meaning people weren't breathing hard, which if they were breathing hard, it would indicate that the intensity was high enough to impact work productivity, but that wasn't the case at all. So high frequency, low resistance pedaling was able to increase their overall METs while not increasing their respiratory rate and not having an impact on work productivity. As a matter of fact, I would argue that it probably helped work productivity because being able to move throughout the day and being healthy, we know, increases work productivity. In another study, we looked at metabolic rate increased by 17.6% with a workstation device, which when compared to standing was only 7%. So it seems that some sort of workstation device may be more effective than just a standing desk, but is definitely effective in increasing our energy expenditure over time. So how can we increase other ways to incorporate movement? You can get water every hour rather than keeping a large container next to your desk. And here's the added benefit of drinking more water is that you need to take more bathroom breaks, which means you get more steps in, right? You could take your garbage or recycling can out from under your desk and put it in the other room. Don't cheat yourself here, though. We're not making a pile of trash on our desk to take all at once. The point is to help yourself, give yourself a reason to get up every once in a while, kind of like Sarah had to when her lights turned off on her, right? Basically, anything that you can do to cut down the amount of time that you are sitting in a chair is going to be helpful, okay? Things you can do at home or during non-work hours is make commercials count. Stand up and move during your commercial breaks. That adds about 15 minutes during an hour-long show. Yes, I know many of us are streaming stuff now, or we have recorded it and we're skipping the commercials. I get it. Me too. But a standard TV show is only 21 to 43 minutes long, right? And the time that I said that you needed to get up was around 45 to 60 minutes. So make sure you're getting up in between shows and doing a little bit of movement, okay? Other things you can do, light stretching and movement before bed or upon waking. Make an after dinner walk or activity the norm for your family. Walk around a ball field while your kids are practicing or playing. You could still watch them while they're doing that. As a matter of fact, I would argue with that, you would probably be more likely to pay more attention because you are not being called by your screen or your phone, right? And other things you could do is play active games like charades, have a dance party. Basically, at the end of the day, we want to put down our phones, turn off our screens, and pursue more movement in our leisure time activities. And every little change that we make will add up to a big difference over time. Our overall strategies really need to be re-engineering our work, our school, and our home environments in order to render active living more an option of choice. We want to try to make the healthy choice the easy choice. And right now, it's very difficult to do that. Lastly, I just want to remind everybody to be kind to yourself during this time because it is all very stressful. And I know that many of us, our daily routines have been thrown out the window over the last year. So, but now is a good time as any to reinstitute some of those things, but make sure you're taking baby steps because we know that health behavior change starts small and they add up to big changes over time. Small changes are easier to maintain over time than completely revamping your life. And if you ever need any guidance or help, as Sarah said previously, please reach out to us. We are always happy to help. Here is a works cited page for all of the various articles I used for the information in here. I have some additional resources here as well as my email address. I do like to just remind anybody that before you start any new physical activity, we do just want to consult your doctor to make sure that you're healthy enough to do so. And lastly here, we do have a survey that we would love for you to take. It's a great way for us to get information from you on how well we're doing and other presentations and topics that are relevant to you, and it helps us formulate some of those additional presentations. And I think at this time we will take questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex. This has been amazingly informative. And I think a lot of people have the misconception that if you exercise, you're good. But the reality is that we are in our desks most of the day. We work from either home and we're sitting that many hours. So that's really incredible and great reminders there. I will be copying this link so that we can share the survey with everyone. Is that what it is, Sarah? Okay. So that will be in the comments section right here. And you can access it through that. We will be taking questions if anyone has any. Okay, I do have a question. I wanted to know, since we're talking about physical activity, the idea of clots came to my mind. Is that something that happens when you're prolonged like sedentary condition? Is that when clots can happen?
Yeah, so clots can happen in multiple from multiple different things. But if you think about like people who are on bed rest in hospitals, they have those leg massagers because what happens is your muscles in your legs actually use let me start over. Your blood in your feet and in your legs have to work against gravity. And your capillaries have valves in them that are kind of like one way. And your leg muscles contracting help move that blood back up to your heart to be reoxygenated and flown back through to flow back through the body. When you're not moving, that's not happening. And so people who are bed rest in the hospitals have those pumps on their legs because they can't do that themselves.
Right.
And so, yes, that there can be an issue with blood clots for people who aren't doing that and aren't being physically active. But there's a whole other host of things that go into that as well. So I don't want to go too much more out of the scope of that question. But yes, it can impact that.
And that's why those desk pedals that you recommended would be helpful in that case.
Oh, yeah. In that case, it would definitely be helpful, but they're helpful in so many things. They're helpful because they increase your overall daily energy expenditure, which helps with making sure that we're not gaining weight when we don't want to because we're not moving. But it also, they're good for a lot of different things.
Okay, so we have someone asking if you can share the slides. I know that you had your contact information. If you'd like to possibly share your email with me so I can post it in the comments section so people can email you with those questions and possibly you can share information.
Also, Alex's slide is on the Wellness Wednesday archive. So if you go to that Wellness Wednesday, sorry, Rona, don't send the one I sent you. It's .edu instead. If you go to the Wellness Wednesday website, you'll actually see Alex's whole presentation with the slides. And I'll be doing my presentation for Wellness Wednesday in a few months. But if you email me now, I'll definitely send you the slides, inshallah.
Okay, wonderful. So we have a question. So I do school right now, even though I am getting up. Okay, so this question is that it seems like she works in a school now as a featured dancer, and even though I am getting up, I still manage to be sitting a lot. What can I do to stop that?
The most important part about the sitting versus standing when it comes to decreasing your health risks is to make sure that you're not sitting too long at one period of time. So if you're in school and your classes are only 45 minutes to an hour long and you're able to get up after your class is over and do movement for 3 to 5 minutes, that's going to be the key to maintaining your health. So I wouldn't be too concerned if you are able to do that. But if we're talking about a class that's maybe 3 hours long or something like that, and you're not able to get up and move around, then I'm not sure, what school you're in, but you might want to consider asking if you have permission to get up and walk around, because this is very important. I'm in meetings sometimes that are 3 hours long, and believe me, I stand up and move around because I know how important it is. And most of the time, people don't find it distracting, and they don't have too much of a problem with that. And I hope that answered your question.
So that's really important for our bosses to know.
Yes, it is. It's so important. And I tell our bosses all the time that you need to lead by example, right? Sometimes we feel as employees, we're like, oh, we shouldn't get up. But if they do it, then you're more likely to do it as an employee because you feel comfortable doing that. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay, good.
Also, if you feel uncomfortable, send Alex's presentation to your boss. They'll understand.
Tell him to call me too. I'll talk to him.
So I've posted both emails. Those are correct, right, Sarah? Okay, perfect. So I have both emails in the comments section. If anyone has any questions, you can contact Sarah and Alex directly. And we do have one question about, is there a specific desk elliptical you would recommend?
That's a great question. I don't have any recommendations. And the reason is because I think anyone is better than none. And what I will say though, is I don't think you need to spend a lot of money on these things. The whole purpose is just for you to move. You don't need to spend $150 on something that's sitting under your desk that all it's going to do is help you move. I think you can be a little bit more frugal with these purchases, but at the same time, you're going to want to get one that you know you're going to use also. If you're just going to buy one that's going to sit in the closet and not do anything for you, then there's no point.
Right. So consistency is key.
Yes, it is.
Good. So someone has a question about reaching out to Sarah and Alex. I do have it in the comments section, so you can access the email right there in the comments section. It will stay there even when we go off live. So that's there for you to reference in the future. If anyone, I guess no more questions. Does anyone have anything to add as final word?
Yeah, I just want to say that what you just shared in the comments, the website, that is where all of our Wellness Wednesday webinars are archived. All of our future Wellness Wednesday webinars are on there as well.
Wonderful.
We hope to see you there.
Excellent.
If I could just share, if you could please make sure you take the survey. It helps us. As I mentioned, we are USDA funded, and so USDA requires us to show we're meeting diverse audiences. And it also helps Alex and I keep track of what we need to improve. And so if, Rena, if you don't mind just adding the link one more time, because I know we put the link.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, please, if you can help fill out the survey, that would be wonderful. It helps bring programming like this and makes it available and helps them navigate on these issues. So here it is. There it is. All right. So we want to thank you so much for your valuable time. This has been an amazing session. It was very informative for me. So I hope, I know that this will be very beneficial to the community at large. And we thank you for your time and hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much for having us.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Assalamu alaikum. Take care. Bye-bye.